Your mom is live.
Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jason Tucker. This is WPwatercooler, episode number 112. Steve says somebody's mom is alive. That's good.
No, not.
So we're going to go around the room here real quick and get everyone introduced. Before we do that, we are going to be talking about should WordPress go corporate? That is the question for the day. Let's start off with an alphabetic order. Chris Sama.
Hi there. I'm Chris, and I am the CTO and Chief Strategist over at a company called CrowdFavorite, and I blog over at chrislama.com.
Nice. How about you, George?
Hi, I'm George Stefanis. I do core things, and I run the Jetpack plugin for Automatic.
Very cool. What about you, Kareem?
Hi, I'm Kareem Rookie, and I also work over at CrowdFavorite.
You said
You
work.
work over there. You work there. You know. No bigs.
What about you, Say? Do you work?
I don't work at CrowdFavorite. Nope. But my name is Say Reed, and I do WordPressy stuff, and I train people on WordPress, and I am obsessed now with small businesses in WordPress and usability. It's my new quest, usability.
Awesome. What about you, Steve?
I am Steve Zenkin. I'm the founder of Zeek Interactive, and I run the OC WordPress meetup.
Suzette.
Mom is live.
Hey, what's up,
Hello.
everyone? This is Jason Tucker.
Hello, everybody. I'm Suzette Frank. I am the front-end developer over at WebDev Studios, and I love WordPress.
Awesome. I'm Jason Tucker. You can find me Jason Tucker on Twitter, and I blog over at wpmedia.pro. So, should WordPress go corporate? What do you guys think?
Well, what do we mean
No,
by corporate?
See you later. Short episode. What do you mean by corporate, George?
I don't know. I'm the one asked to be here.
So,
Dodging the
Is that how
question.
this works?
as
You're
Jason,
not opting in?
Yeah, I think we should define what is meant by corporate, because when I told people about the topic of the show, they said, "What are you talking about?"
Let's define the word go.
I mean,
So-
because at the same point, we need to think that corporate itself just means like a collection, an amalgam of individuals. So, I mean,
no. A corporation is a person. We're already clear on that.
okay, Mitt.
So there's big corporations and there's small corporations, and I have a sneaking suspicion that this topic is more about enterprise than corporate. Yeah?
So
Yeah.
what happened was we started talking about as Jason and I were talking about the show, we started talking about events, and the events that were starting to come out, like LoopConf, that were charging $800 a ticket. And I said, that's what happens when this stuff goes corporate, right? It's legit. You're going to have developers that work for large companies who get paid to go to a conference. It's not irregular for those conferences to cost $800 to $1,500. And at that point, we started talking about, okay, should we talk about events? Should we talk about just going upstream and becoming something that, you go to your boss and you start saying, hey, this is an event I want to go to, will you pay for? And all of that presupposed that WordPress was going there, right? And so then we said, well, let's ask the question, should it go there, right? Should it go up market? Should it go upstream? Should it go and become more corporate? At the end of the day, is this going to be developed by people who wear hoodies or people who wear pinstripe hoodies? That's the question that we have to answer.
Good distinction. I think that WordPress is like water, and it's not something that you can control going anywhere by default, or by the fact that it is open source. Anyone can use it, and I think that accessibility means that people are going to use it all across the spectrum, from the smallest, tiniest startup to the, I don't know, Disney. They're kind of a giant conglomerate.
Well, and Microsoft, really.
Yeah, and Microsoft, although.
Which WebDev Studios has just released a couple sites on.
Yes.
Yeah, we have.
I think that it's a very good thing that there are more distinct types of events that are coming along with big ticket prices, because unless I'm mistaken, I think until very recently, the only big ticket events, workshops focusing on WordPress were ones that like the WordPress.com VIP ran for clients and freelancers and companies and things along those lines. I'm very happy to see community organizations and groups come up like LoopConf that actually are going in that direction.
Well, didn't Pressnomics kind of start this trend, and aren't they kind of the leader in this? Like they broke
What was
that
the
mold
Pressnomics
open,
ticket
right?
price?
Well, Pressnomics was based for WordPress companies to go to. I'm more interested also in seeing more WordPress business, as in Steve and I spoke at WordCamp San Diego a year and a half ago, where Chris organized sort of a business track, and not a lot of WordCamps do that. So it's nice to have these things like LoopComp come around so that we can actually have more business conversations, or even like project management courses for folks.
Yeah, and LoopComp specifically will be less business and more technical. So LoopConf is going to end up playing in that space of, like you'd go to a PHP World or something else, and you go to your company and you ask for them to pay for it, right? But the very nature of asking your company to pay for it means you're stepping into corporate waters, right? You're stepping into getting expense reports for an event, and someone looking and saying, wait a minute, you're going to a WordPress conference, isn't that free? And so what does it look like to take WordPress into these environments, and what does it look like for us to articulate the value in those environments as it starts becoming more mainstream? And George is right. Up until recently, we just didn't see a lot of this.
Are we talking about literally the conference itself and like the price of the ticket being the line of demarcation that we're talking about here, or the topics of the conference, where in the conference they talk about corporate and enterprise level issues using WordPress? Like,
Yes.
I'm a little...
Well, I think it's a little bit of both.
Yes.
George was asking about Pressnomics, which is $350 a ticket. And other ones are more based on topic. So I think it's a little bit of both, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't go to any of those conferences, so anyone
same
can
here.
chime in on that?
Well, I'm curious as what's actually being discussed at one of those conferences. Like, how does that differentiate it from some conference where they're talking about interacting with their customers or something like that? Like, what's so special or different to the business sense that's very business focused for WordPress specifically, not just as a business, running a franchise or something like that?
Well, and
I
also,
think,
what are they that is not? How do they differentiate themselves from a WordCamp, apart from having more focus and a higher average aptitude in the audience for a general focus?
So I think there's something that changes when you cross into a conference like LoopConf, and that's just one. Whereas a WordCamp, I mean, you could talk to any of us, any of our friends, any of the people who say the majority of what I get at a WordCamp is connection, hanging out, it's a way to give back, etc. But you're not sitting in the sessions going, this just blew my mind. We went very deep, either because of time or because the audience, or several things like that. Also, you discover that in many of the WordCamps, you have people who are freelancers, who are one person who have to do both. They have to manage their business, and they have to manage their client projects, and they have to manage development. But when you become more corporate, you get into these projects that aren't two-person projects. They're not three-person projects. Sometimes they're 12-person projects. And in a 12-person project, you have a dedicated PM that all they do is PM work. You have a dedicated developers, all they do is develop. And they go to conferences that are deep technically because they're trying to sharpen their saw specifically around development. So you look at a lot of the technology conferences that are out there that cost people $800, $1,000, $1,200 to go to, and whether it's just a dedicated project management conference or a dedicated advanced developer conference for any one of myriad different technologies, what you discover is it's becoming, the technology has penetrated into organizations that have people working on those kinds of projects. And we all know agencies that are working on 5-person, 10-person projects, but the majority of the folks that we interact with aren't, right? The majority of the folks we interact with are small businesses themselves or freelancers working on small business sites and freelancer sites. And so once you start moving corporate, things start adjusting from topic to price tag to organization to all sorts of things, right? And the question is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Is it a helpful thing? What's your take on it?
I think it's a helpful thing for the person who's the one man shop, the one who's like, well, what am I need to, usually they have the problem of I either need a designer or a developer. Now the next piece is, oh my gosh, I need a project manager. Oh my gosh, I need somebody who's doing collections. I need somebody that does this. Like you're telling them here's the things that are going to be coming up down the road here. What'd you have to say?
I don't remember.
I'm sorry.
No, it wasn't you. It was my dog. Distracted. Chris said something interesting, though, as per usual, that I thought was interesting.
And what was that?
I don't remember.
Oh, gosh.
As per usual.
As per usual.
So the thing is that when I hear business, I hear more about the business side than the WordPress business side. Like,
I remember. Yeah, it was about that.
Okay, please.
That's what you're talking about. No, it was about that. Like, so I'm confused still. My apologies, but are we talking about that? Are we talking about the business of WordPress? Like, we're just running businesses, and that do WordPress stuff, or are we talking about WordPress being used for businesses that are large-scale, giant corporations, or are we talking about the conferences that are geared towards a more corporate audience with a higher price tag?
Again, yes.
So what's our focus?
Kareem brought up. I want to say something. Kareem brought up the business track that was at WordCamp San Diego a year and a half ago, and I just led the business track at WordCamp LA. I'm curious if there's. It seemed to be for a while there was some resistance to have those kinds of tracks at a WordCamp, right? Do you think that that's changed? Do you think that that's more acceptable now at a WordCamp? Is it still city by city? What's going on there?
Basically, having tracks that don't specifically relate to WordPress, but are useful to folks that are in the environment.
Correct.
Well, George, for instance, project managing a project for WordPress project has some specific in and outs, which can be helpful to freelancers and small agencies, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
I would argue that the project management course is perfect for WordCamp if the WordCamp attendees are both developers and bloggers.
Yeah. I think so.
I think the problem is I think there's definitely a split happening at the WordCamp level because you have what folks like what Chris was just talking about. You have these folks who've been going to WordCamps for a long time, and you can only have so many topics about WordPress. And the problem with WordCamps is you are catering to an audience from complete noob to, Mark Jakewith, who's obviously not a noob, and so it's really difficult to target those talks to be relevant. And I know that there's definitely some there's a direction that folks are trying to go in to make it more or less technical and do more of the Friday foundation type things. And so I think that the camps are trending that way to be more generic to business topics that folks are using, WordPress companies, and teaching them to have better business practices and whatnot. But I don't think that answers the question of WordPress operating at a corporate scale or at a large organization enterprise scale. I think that's what I'm interested in talking about. But
I think that's the thing though, is that if you're starting off with the smaller people, smaller companies, and you're working your way up, at some point they become the crowd favorites, the web dev studios that are out there, and who are they going to look at? Well, they're going to look towards yet larger companies that aren't doing camps. They're not trying to share each other's information or anything like that. They're just they're just talking about how to run business, and they're doing it from internally. They're not doing it externally like a WordCamp is.
So I think you have to remember what the point of a WordCamp is, right? The WordCamp is not meant to solve every problem the community has, and I think if we jam too much into a WordCamp, we will face a different set of problems. But most people go to one WordCamp, right? In a given year, they go to one. They go to their local one. Most people don't travel very far to get to that one. Most people go, and it may be one of their first times or their first or second time ever going to some event like that. They pay $20, $25 to get there. Those people often are looking for, does WordPress work for my project? How does WordPress work for my project? Who can I meet here who can help me with my project? That's a perfect environment for a local venue to do a local small conference. And I think they work out very well for them. And I think adding little things like an advanced topic here or there, or business topics here or there, are all very helpful to some of that audience that's there, because you have freelancers that are there. You have people who are just getting to step into it from a developer perspective or a client perspective. But corporate's a different, to me, corporate's a different ballgame. Corporate is 5 and 10 people working on a project at once, and that changes a lot of things. It means dedicated PMs, which changes a lot of things. It means actual formal quotes, which changes a lot of things. And I don't mean, projects that are 5,000 or 10,000. I mean the bigger projects, the projects where the client tells you, this is the rider that you have to have on it with a certain amount of insurance, or else I won't deal with you. And when you deal in that ballgame, it goes corporate, and all of a sudden you have
Fast.
companies. It goes corporate fast, and all of a sudden you have lawyers and you have legal agreements. And I mean, we literally were I was in the middle of reviewing a legal document that was given to us as part of a contract, and I basically looked at our COO and I said, just say no. Just say no. Like, we cannot sign. This is what it means to go corporate, because I'm reading the corporate document, the contract, and it's talking about us being liable for every line of code, et cetera, when half of this is open source and I'm not liable for it. And so when WordPress goes into that space, it changes things, and it changes us, and it changes how we articulate things. But it also, we have the potential to change those organizations as well, to introduce them to open source and to the dynamics of what it looks like to work with and create an open source plugin that they're going to give away to the rest of the world for free, instead of it being their secret sauce, right? There's a lot of dynamics that play out when you move corporate, and I just think the question is, I keep coming back to, is that a good thing? I think it is, but I'd love to hear the rest of your take.
I don't think that it is good or bad. I think it's inevitable. WordPress is a really useful tool, and as it grows and scales, everyone is talking about it. 23.5% of the internet is using it. I think corporations want to save money too, and it's cheaper to go with an open source software than it is to go with a proprietary software and build it from scratch for a lot of reasons.
Sorry. And I think that stat is important, because what's shifted for me is my clients are now open to using WordPress. They're asking me for WordPress, where a couple of years ago, IT would kill that. They'd put the kibosh on that immediately, because IT's never. It used to be IT would never implement an open source platform, on their servers. They just wouldn't have it.
Did you hear?
That's changing now.
It is changing. Did you hear that Microsoft just brought .NET into open source, which is, pretty exciting.
You can start running cross-platform, so you can run it on Linux servers or Mac servers, anything you want to.
I could finally fork Minesweeper.
Everybody and their brother has wanted .NET on Mac, right? Raise your hand if you want.
Oh yeah, totally.
Oh yeah. And actually, I just want to say something. When I think corporate, I equate that to IT. It's just IT's been my enemy for 19 years.
I love
there's no structure there. I mean, they were going to get upset about that, because they can't control every line of code, like Chris is saying, and there is a bit of kind of Wild West aspect to WordPress no matter what. And I think a lot of times they also worry that you're going to bring in, some Contact Form 7 plugin that's going to annihilate everything.
Here's the problem. For instance, in WordPress 4.0 now, Google fonts are hard-coded in, and Crystal has a little story about that, I'm sure.
Well,
hard-coding?
It's what happens is, in order to bring Open Sans or the other fonts that we use in, it looks like in 4.0, we're doing the call to bring it in and bring in the acceptable terms of service with it, right? So you can download and bring in Open Sans. The problem is that when you do that, you got to look at the terms of service, right? And when you look at the terms of service, I don't know what company, what corporation is going to turn around and say this is okay, right? Because when you read what Google is having you sign, it says that Google will that you are giving just by using that, by accepting that terms of service, and by downloading that Google font onto the IP of the server. Google now can take pictures of your sites, including screenshots and video, other content, and use your company and use your product name, and you've granted them all the rights to do all of that.
Wow.
And
that could be during development.
That could be during any point in time, right? And so all of a sudden, your developers who are just like, this is cool, I'll just drop this line in and put this Google font, and I'll give you an option of 20, and isn't that awesome? You've now just created a liability for that company, right? When we talk about WordPress going corporate, it's not just, is it cool and do companies want to use it? It also puts a burden on the developers that are involved and going upstream to look at liabilities and look at risk mitigation. And those are things that if you're not in the corporate world, if you're kind of a freelancer having fun, and then all of a sudden you get excited because you're going to do a corporate thing, you can step into it and all of a sudden be in over your head, right?
That's so true. I noticed one thing, I think, when WordPress gets into the corporate, and I'm seeing this a lot in meetups, is that people are asking about HIPAA compliance, and they're asking about PCI compliance, and what does this mean for a freelancer that's doing WordPress? What resources do they have? I mean, they really have no clue, but if they had some kind of security breach in HIPAA or PCI compliance, that could totally wipe them out, take their house, depending on how they have their business entity set up. So it's like you have to take these steps to protect yourself and, work with a company or a business entity. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, a lot of that has very little to do with the actual core software. A lot of that is the developer themselves informed enough to be aware of what you do when something goes wrong.
Yep. Yep.
Right, and we've had clients come to us and tell us, I'm sorry, we can't accept things like the font or other types of plugins. So you have to know what you're getting into as a shop when you go up market.
Yeah, well, because it's not just the liability and the contracts and that type of thing. It's just the whole tool set changes. So I don't think it's even the same conversation, even though it's the same software. You're having these are completely different conversations and completely different. They end up being completely different tool, like WordPress at the corporate level and WordPress at the small business or whatever level, the other level, normal level. Because, like I was saying, you're not bringing in the same type of plugins. You're probably making your own plugins that are proprietary, or like what Crowd Favorite does, pushing those out. And you have all these other concerns. So I think it makes a lot of sense to me to have these other conferences, as long as those conferences are dealing with those issues. I don't know what they're talking about because I'm not going there. I don't think, talking about, how you should best develop your business model is the type of thing that we are talking about. I think we're more talking about, HIPAA compliance and all these things and vulnerabilities in the software that are something that matter a lot more and are a lot more dramatic at a large enterprise corporate scale.
Yeah, and I think I've seen an earlier rendition of the speakers at LoopConf, for example, and it looks technically solid. It looks like they're going to cover a bunch of stuff. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out and how well people rush to buy tickets and all that, because it's a very different ballgame. But I think it's good. I think it is, as you said, it's very different, and it means that you interact with customers differently, and you interact with the code differently, and you interact with project plans differently. And I think part of the dynamic is going to be helping people navigate that move and highlighting, right, to the broader community all the time that where the real benefit of WordPress grows is still down at the base. It's still making sure that everybody gets access to and can use all of these tools. Democratizing publishing is still valuable, and when you go corporate, you're really talking about a very, very small set of sites comparatively to the broader nature of every man out there every person who wants a website and wants to make it easy to do.
I think the fact that what you're saying. What?
You said you got to go after both.
I think the fact that see, now it's gone again. Gotta go after both is all I can think. I think it's really something.
I mean, the cool thing is that at LoopConf, when you're up there speaking, you can assume a certain level of technical proficiency in your audience. You don't need to start from the basics like you do at a WordCamp talk and start building on it. You can actually skip the basics, assume that your audience has that, apart from like maybe a token mention. If you don't understand this, come see me after. And really get in depth on specific tickets. And so it's not, and then you can even further, I think there's got to be, as this type of event proliferates, there's got to be less repetition of talks, because organizers aren't going to feel like we need to have this one token security talk that all sound the same because they're all saying the exact same thing, and each security talk that you see at this type of conference could go very much in depth about completely different things. The importance of sanitizing your inputs and how folks can get around it, cross-site scripting, whatever, what have you.
Wait, let me write that down. Hang on a second.
My topic is going to be so technically advanced that most people will be left with questions. The only part they're going to understand is the story at the beginning. And
wait, you're going to tell the story? That's amazing. Revolutionary.
Yeah.
Just remember, no pyrotechnics.
I mean, I hope...
I want pyrotechnics.
I hope that if we, since we're having this, and at the core of it, WordPress still is a software that is for the single user, the small business. That's what it was developed for what you were talking about, democratizing publishing so that everyone could publish. I think the fact that these big corporations like Disney and Ferrari and everyone else that Crowd Favorite works with is wanting to use WordPress is awesome. I think that speaks really highly to the software, and it also kind of shames the corporate sphere a little bit as far as usability goes. I mean, if all of those folks are switching over to an open source software that's really made for a much smaller scale, I think that speaks to a strong need within that community. And I think that's awesome for WordPress, and hopefully some of the practices that get adopted there will trickle down into the kind of the average user, so that we get more secure, we get all of that stuff.
Well, it also
is a larger scale concern.
It also fills in the medium-sized business, say, because if we start with democratizing is literally at the low end of the scale with end users publishing blogs, and then we have our clients at the other end, the fact that our clients are using it now too will let medium businesses who are scared of using it and small businesses who are scared of using it saying, okay, if they're using it on both ends, maybe it is right for me, and that makes a deeper market for freelancers and small shops.
So WordPress is perfect for the Ferrari Testarossa and the Ford Pinto.
Yeah. I think that's awesome, and I think that is what's happening, and I am excited about folks like Crowd Favorite leading that charge, because I think just the awareness of WordPress is, makes it more powerful because more people are contributing, more people are using it. It's all going to just keep moving faster and faster. I think it's kind of exciting. I don't think that there's a should. Just to answer our own question, I don't think that should it go or should it not go. I think it's going. It's going corporate. It's going. It's inevitable. It's what's happening.
But it's also not leaving the little guy behind. The little guy is still going to be able to use the product. They're still going to be able to interact with it. They're still going to be able to crank out cat websites, no problem at all. But you're also going to be able to crank out Ferrari websites too.
And my Ford Pinto blog.
And that also makes WordPress into this a skill set that's this literacy in WordPress is becoming something people put on their resumes. So now even that skill is being used.
Hold on. Literacy and WordPress. I just got to write that phrase down so I can use it in my resume.
Yes, you definitely need a resume, Chris. Just get on that. But I think
Microsoft Word, Excel, WordPress. Access
just because you guys haven't had to make a resume in a really long time, there are a lot of folks who do that.
People still put Microsoft Office as a skill.
You know why? Because there are still people who can't use it. I know that's completely unbelievable to us. Who are all plugged into our. There's still a computer literacy issue in everywhere as far as
look at the time.
Yeah, that's about it for today. Thank you so much for talking about Thank you
I
so
think
much
it's
for
great.
talking about Fox
Good.
Pro with me. I really appreciate it. Make sure you go to the website WPwatercooler.com and click on the links there. You can also click like, subscribe, the little thumbs up buttons, whatever it is that you see on the site. Make sure you click on one of those. Talk to you guys later. Bye bye.